So I would just want to be teaching people what circle is,
Mm.
because a lot of people don't know. Um, and your story, among others, but your story in particular, I wanted to ask about what brought you to Circle, and especially because you were in Circle like 3 years ago, how being in Circle once has had a lasting impact or like a
Mm.
rippling effect. A lot of the stories that I share and gather are like, you're in Circle right now. How is that impacting your immediate life? Why did you come and how's it helping you? So, so to hear somebody who was in Circle at least 3 years ago, sharing a little bit
Yeah.
about what's how it's still, still a
Okay.
thing. I would love for people to hear that. So, Sheridan, tell us your story, any part of it. And I do have someone behind me
Who's got her?
in case there's like, what is that? It's a whole person.
It's a being. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that when I actually, the more that I reflect, the more I realize that if I hadn't have gone to Circle 3 years ago, if I hadn't have been in that process, God, my whole entire life would not be the way that it is. It was a catalyst for so many other catalysts and so many things, starting because, so when I arrived, I didn't really know what the hell I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I needed. And I didn't know how to ask for what I need. And I didn't have access to the community that I wanted to have around me. So I had my community, yeah, but it was kind of keeping me where I was rather than pushing me or inspiring me to be the next person in my journey. So I think I went to Circle honestly because I was like, yeah, that's like, well, what else? Unlike maybe where I am now or other people are now. At that point, I didn't really feel like there was like an inundation of options, and so maybe it's kind of because of the role that I have in my life, but it definitely feels like right now there is someone telling you that they're the key and this program or this experience is going to like change things. Honestly, I didn't go to it because it felt like the best option. I went to it because there was no other option. But I can see now that it was the only and the best option. If I had gone with like something else, if I had done something else, it wouldn't have had the same effects. Maybe shorter term effects, but not long lasting. In Circle, I came and this is so on topic with what I was talking about today. I came and I was like, I'm doing really great in my life. Everything's going really well. I've had some things that have happened, but I'm dealing with them and I just want to connect with like-minded people. Yeah, not really true. I had some really heavy stuff that was going on, but I didn't have a safe space to actually confront that within myself, right? Like I had my practices and everything, but there's another level of community when you have someone who's like, I got you, it's okay, like, and who gives you that opportunity of speaking and healing. And that's what that was. And then all of the people around, all of the people that were there, like every single person who was in that circle, I'm still in contact with today. And we have deeper relationships than if I had met them outside. We actually have really, really deep relationships no matter where they are. And those same people are people who I never would have met if it weren't for Circle, because they were that next level, the impact that it had like directly was it gave me more confidence, it gave me more ability, it gave me a little bit of a map to my own understanding of myself. From the people that I've met there, one, I've learned tools that I still use, like the clearing tool, for example. Like I use that, and I use that in my work with the foundation. I learned, there was like my 101 to personal development, spiritual development, and femininity. And then everything on top, like you keep building on top of it. And there have been times over the past years where I've been like, oh yeah, like I remember Sarah like said something about that in Circle once. And then you're like, oh, now I'm ready to remember what she said and apply it into my life. And that's really, really powerful. There is no other way to, yeah, it changed everything. It gave me the support and the confidence and the community to do what I needed for myself, to ask for help, to realize what I needed and go for it. I don't have any other words. It really was life-changing. It really
Those
was,
are pretty
yeah.
good words.
And I don't think I realized it so much at the time.
And that's okay, because it doesn't have to, I mean, if you had realized it at the time, would that almost have been too much to handle?
Yeah, it would have been too much to handle. It would have been like, oh my God, I'm in the storm. Like I'm in the, whereas now you look back on it and you're like, oh yeah, huh.
Oh yeah, that was, so I want to thank you for all of that, because it's incredible. And I hadn't had that conversation with you to like, what impact did Circle have on you? So I love hearing that. It's really important for me as the person who's holding Circle to hear these stories too. Um, in other places and in your social media, I know you've shared your own journey with alopecia. Can you just that little nugget that you've shared elsewhere, can you share here
Yeah.
as well?
Okay, so I've had alopecia since I was 7 years old, and it started just quite slowly, little patches and everything, and it progressed to full-blown alopecia. So in the past year or so, I've actually gone to universalis, which means that I don't have eyelashes or eyebrows or like arm hair or anything. And honestly, it was really freaking hard. Yeah, like it was deep and dark and confusing and painful to be in those years of adolescence and young adulthood and dealing with everything, having hair loss on top of it. We didn't have, well, I didn't believe we have the awareness and education that today many people have. But at the same time, I recognize not everyone has that. And you feel really, 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 really alone. The people around you don't know how to deal with it. How are they going to know how to deal with it? And it was really awful. And I went into my young adult life kind of wanting to avoid and resist and not really do anything. And I got out of contact with who I was. And the first part of getting in back to contact was yoga. And I developed my yoga practice, and I was doing yoga at home, and that was very, very good for me. And this is where it ties back into Circle, because I got to a point where I was like, okay, I feel good, I feel grounded, but I haven't been to a yoga class because I'm too scared to take off my wig. And like I felt like, okay, now I have this base inside of me, I want to bring it out to the next level. And that's kind of when I started looking for what options were available, you know. And in a sense, sisterhood was the step, because I could go with my wig on and I could talk about that stuff, right? I didn't know when I got to sisterhood that there was going to be one day where I was going to say, yeah, like I really want to go to, you know, I literally was just talking and I was like, yeah, well, I would like to go to the yoga class that's here afterwards, but I'm nervous because I would have to take off my wig and I haven't done that and I don't want to. And then like Sarah, you were like, well, what would be ideal? What would the ideal situation? And I was like, well, I would just take off my wig just the same way people take off their shoes. And Sarah was like, but why can't you do that? And I was like, oh, I guess I can. And that was, you know, one Thursday. And then the next Thursday, I was like, okay, well, and then all the girls instantly were like, well, let's do it. Let's go. And the next Thursday we went, and, you know, we went after Circle, and we're like ready. And the picture I have is that day because I'm wearing yoga pants. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And we're walking down the street and I'm like, I'm going to do it, guys. I'm going to take it off. And so I took off my wig and all of the girls were so supportive. And, you know, these are like these amazing women that I never would have gotten in contact with. And going to that yoga class, I didn't like it. I did not like that yoga class. It was not fun. But it made me realize that you actually just can do it. And that was when I became more comfortable with my alopecia. Now my whole life is around the alopecia, and now I'm the person who is inspiring other people, and I'm doing all of that healing for myself, for everyone else. And that was really one of the top pivoting moments in Circle.
And you're a yoga instructor, right? Like you've done the yoga teacher training, you've done all of that that may or may not have happened or not on this timeline if you had that story of like, I can't take off my wig had
Yeah, it
continued,
wouldn't have
right? It's just a
happened.
story.
Yeah, if I had this idea and I wasn't challenged on that, and no one, I feel like you really do need like some type of coach or mentor to challenge you on that, because if a friend says it, you're like, you don't understand. You really need someone to come in and disrupt that. It wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't be in the relationship that I'm in now, which is a beautiful, lovely, amazing relationship that I'm very grateful for. I wouldn't have done my yoga teacher training. I wouldn't have become a yoga teacher. On top of that, I wouldn't have done the next yoga teacher training, and I wouldn't have understanding of the brain and the chemistry and the psychology behind it. I wouldn't be coaching other women to find their own confidence. Like, it wouldn't be this whole full circle without that first step and the people who supported that first step.
Thank you. I love hearing this story, and it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months ago that you first publicly made that link, and so I didn't know that
Yeah.
some more or less innocuous comment that I made years ago was a pivotal thing. And you said something just a second ago about challenging, and I think when, like, certain relationships, a challenge can feel threatening, as opposed to a challenge feeling really supportive, like, I believe in you and I'm going to push you where you aren't maybe willing to push yourself. But in other circumstances, that exact same comment or nudge can actually be really threatening and have somebody sort of collapse in on themselves instead of being like, wait a minute, I actually can.
Yeah.
We all have stories. We all carry around these stories of, I can do this and I can't do that. I want to, but I can't. And, I have these stories too. So, like, being in a space where we get to see those stories, question those stories, and then challenge those stories, we don't know who we can become until we get nudged out of our little habits.
Yeah, because those are the stories that keep you where you are. You keep doing it, and like, you need that little to come in and say, actually, there is another way. Yeah, and then the whole world just really opens up. It's really beautiful. You first. I think my internet. Hello.
Mine too. It's been terrible this month. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Okay,
you.
we're back.
We're back. Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to thank you again for sharing your various stories, sharing your experience with Circle, with the idea that maybe somebody's going to resonate with something that you've said and be like, oh yeah, I want a space like that. Oh yeah, I'm where she was and I want to find what she's found.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people who could be served by Circle, but if we don't know what Circle is, then we can't be served by it. So
yeah, and in saying that, to give a little bit of insight, for me, like, Circle was a regular space where I got to be whatever I wanted on that day, supported by. And so there are, like, you have the conversations that you can participate in as much as you want. That was really key. Like, knowing that it is a container where you can show up exactly as you are and get exactly what you need in that moment. So if you need to be integrated into the discussion and talk, then, like, go for it. If you need to ask questions, then you do that. If you need to not say anything, then you need to not say anything. But if there's anyone that's kind of like looking out and they're like, oh, well, this sounds, I'm curious, I would just say, like, well, you have to go for it, because you get curious about things that are talking to a piece inside of you, and the more we deny that, well, we're actually doing the exact opposite of what Circle's doing. Circle's teaching you to recognize that and act on it in an empowering way, right? So the first step is say yes.
And with the final thought about Circle and what you just shared, I see posts all the time. It's like, babe, just be yourself, right? And that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But before I held Circle, I didn't know who the fuck that was.
Yeah.
Be yourself. Which version of me do you want me to be right now? Was my best attempt, right? And I just heard you say is like, show up as yourself, and show up as whichever version of yourself is there today, so
Yeah.
that you can get to know the various versions of yourself and be like, oh, I'm going to keep this one and I'm going to chuck that one. And none of these have actually been the real me. I've just been trying various things. And so for me, one of the things I hear often the most, and what was true for me, is Circle's a space where I get to figure out who the hell that is on a weekly basis, because it's not the same every week. I'm like, who are you this week? Who are you today? Right?
Yeah,
And
that's such a good
that
point.
space is really, it's different than any other space that I've seen that women can come together and support each other. And we're going to help you figure out who you are today and whoever the hell you're going to be next week. And that's fine. So I just want to thank you again for sharing your stories and letting us in to your life. So
thank you for inviting me and for your patience and everything. And yeah, thank you. Thanks for holding the space continuously for different groups of people and showing up every single day to serve in the best way that you can.
It is totally my pleasure. It's how I do my learning. Thank you, my love. As you know, now you know, right?
Now I know. Oh God, now I know.
Yep, just a little bit deeper into the pond. Yeah. Thank you, my love.
Yeah, it's a deep
Have a
pond.
beautiful day.
You
Thanks.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye.